Hello guys, welcome to day 22 of the Excel online training. Yesterday we spoke about recording macros and we tried to answer some simple examples and applications of macros. I hope you actually took out time to practice some of the things we talked about yesterday, because practice makes perfect. And today we'll be writing some macros. We'll be writing it's more like a code, and it's written in VBA, Visual Basic for Application. Visual Basic is actually one of the Microsoft proprietary languages, programming languages for development, application development. But there is a version of Visual Basic that was embedded in Microsoft Suite, like we saw yesterday when I showed you how to actually activate your developer tab. So this version is called the VBA. It's used for you to basically write and automate tasks in Microsoft Office Suite. So it's applicable, it's available in all Microsoft Office Suite application, in your Word, in Microsoft Word, in Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and so on. You can always get VBA in all of them by going through the same process to, of course, activate your developer tab. So I'll be showing you how to write some simple codes. Our function today, we just want to receive some inputs. We'll receive an input from user, then we will display out the input again. You receive the input, you display out the input. Then also we take another example. We receive the input, we process it, then we store the input in the sheet. So we're going to try these two examples so you can actually see how these things work. Now, after we've enabled our developer tab, there's a particular section there where you can see control. So we'll be working on the control. Now you come to the insert here, click on insert. Then if you notice there are two forms here, you see the form control and then you see the ActiveX control. We'll be working mainly with the ActiveX for now. Now, although the form controls makes it a lot easier, it's more like you can assign a button to recording the macro. But the ActiveX actually makes it, how do I put it, makes it a lot flexible for us to design how we want it to be designed. Okay, so if you remember the example we ran last time, whereby we recorded a macro. Now for control forms, you can just create a button and say, okay, when I click this button, run that macro. Instead of using the shortcut or coming here to say macros, then running the macro, you can just do a button to say, when I click the button, just run the macro. But ActiveX, we're still going to get to that, but ActiveX makes it a lot more simpler for us because we can write our code directly. So I'll show you that example. So like I said, our first example, we're just going to take an input from the user and display it back to the user. So look at it this way. Excel, there are different ways to receive inputs from user in Excel. As you know, you can always type inputs there, but there are also some other methods with which you can use to receive input from user, even if the user does not type it in the Excel. Just like by using some form control. So it's just like when you are on a website, a dialog box can come up whereby you can type in information and then the system is able to use that information and process the information. So those are part of the things we will learn here today. Now on this ActiveX, the first thing you have here is the command button. So I'll just click on the command button. Let me draw a small button here so you can see the name is command button 1. Now we look at this. Immediately I draw the button, you notice this is in design mode. That means I'm actually in design mode. Design mode is more like in construction stage. Okay, so you're currently constructing it. Once you're done, you deactivate the design mode, then it runs. But we'll leave it at design mode because we are still working on it. Now I'll double click on this and then it brings out the Visual Basic for Application. Okay, so you can see the Visual Basic for Application. You can see the property bar. Okay, now from this property bar, I can actually change the color. Let's assume I want to change the back color of what my button looks like. I can change the font color. You can do a lot of property modification of property formatting for the command button that we've created here, but that will not be our focus. So here is where you actually put in your code. So here, what I would just do is I would receive the input from the user using what we call an input box. But remember, any input you receive, programmers will tell you that you actually need to store it somewhere. So you need a variable in which you can store in all your input. So I'll first create the variable and then I'll say dim. Now, one lovely thing, I think I usually tell people Visual Basic is probably the simplest language really, and because really Visual Basic is not even case sensitive, so you can type and then it does a lot of adjustments for you all by itself. So dim is the keyword you use when you want to declare a variable. So it's more like this is dim, and then I can say my input as variant. Variant basically is a data type to say any type of data that comes into it, just hold that data type. Okay, so this is like a flexible data type. So can you see immediately I pressed enter, I just corrected the statement itself. So everything that should be capital letter, it corrected it without throwing any error. So now I've defined a variable called my input. Now I can use this my input and let user input there, or let user provide some data into this variable. Then I call the function I want to use for the input box. It's called input box, just like the name. So it's called input box. I open a bracket, then you put it in double quotes. Okay, and now I put the information the user should see when they call this input box. I can say, okay, please provide some input. Okay, so you say please provide some input. Okay, I press enter, then I can output the input back to the user, and by outputting it I can use a functionality that we call the message box. It's just like a dialog box, so I can say message box. Okay, and then put the input back. Let's just put the input back and call it my input. Okay, yeah, so this is it. Now if I come back to this Excel, now remember, because I changed the color actually changed there. So any modification you make to the property bar here or to the property box here actually takes effect on the front end. So now I remove it from design mode and then I press the button. Now look at this. While it's in design mode, you can't actually press the button. It's more like you're just highlighting the button and you can drag it around. But immediately you remove it from design mode, you're able to press the button. So I press. Look at this, immediately Excel brings out a dialog box for me to say please provide some input, like I actually typed in the code. So I can say Samuel. Immediately I press OK. Look at what happens. Excel returns the same information to me and says Samuel. Okay, so you're able to take input and produce the input or produce an output from the input. Let's go back to the code and make a little bit of adjustment. Now before I do that, let me go back to design mode. Okay, now instead of just saying Samuel, let's change it to show your name is. Now because your name is actually a string, so it's going to appear the same way, but this my input changes based on whatever the user enters here. So it's not going to be in the double quote, but there is a way you actually add this, you merge these two strings together, because it's also in this case a string, but I can actually use this and sign. Okay, so this and sign basically manages, it's more like your concatenator when you want to actually concatenate strings together. So let's go back and then run it again. I'll provide the same input, Samuel, and it says your name is Samuel. Okay, so I'm taking the input and I'm returning the input back to the user, taking the input, returning the input back to the user. But sometimes you don't want to just return the input to the user. Sometimes you want to actually save the input. Let's assume it's a number. You want to save it on Excel because you want wherever other people come. Because now I'm not actually keeping the input. I'm just taking it and throwing it back to the user. But sometimes you want to actually retain the input, put it in your Excel sheet itself. So let me quickly do that kind of example for us, so that we're able to take the input, okay, and return it to the user. So before I go into that, let me just come here let's say name here. So I want whatever name the user enters to be in this cell here, B1, because name is there, so I want it to be here, B1. You should put it here, apart from just outputting it to me. So I come back to this code. Now after outputting it, I can now say, okay, I can now say do this for me, range. Now a way to actually provide an input to a cell, a way to interact with cells in Excel is by using the range function. So I call it range, and then I type the cell number I want it to be. I want it to be in cell B1, right? So I say it should be dot value. The dot attribute basically gives you all the properties of the cell. So dot value should be equals to my input, right? Just this line is all you need. So let's go back and disable this mode, and then we say, what is your name? Let's say Janet. So it tells you first your name is Janet. Now look at this, the name is not appearing here yet, but immediately we press OK, it comes here and says Janet here. That's because the way we wrote our code, it should first output it, right, before it actually stores it in that cell. So it outputs it and it can store it in the cell. I hope you actually understand that. So that's how you can take input from users. We'll be applying this in our subsequent classes, or in our subsequent sessions, where you'll be taking inputs from users at different points in time, and we're going to be using those inputs for different things. Now, for example, let's change this. Let's just quickly change the face of this code and say, instead of just providing some input, we just say, please provide your year of birth, right? So you take this, okay, but instead of just imputing the year of birth here, you can now basically just write a code. Okay, now let me comment this out. So this is how you comment in VBA. You just use this apostrophe sign, and it's a comment. That means VBA would not run this particular code. But then I can now still use this here and say this B1.value. So instead of saving the name in B1, just basically save 2021 minus the input we got. I'm sure you understand the meaning of this, what we are doing here, right? That means you want to calculate the age of the person, like this current year minus the year of birth of the person. It will give you the age. But here, let's do a new dialog box and say MSG box, and then we can come here and say you are, put it here. Okay, so we can still use, okay, now because I didn't complete it before pressing out, but I can basically just copy this line, which is what I need. Okay, and say years old. Okay, so let's run this and see how it's going to work. We come back here, let's say age. Let's put age here instead, because it will no longer give us the name. So we click the button. It says, what's your year of birth? Let's assume I was born say 2010. Press OK. So it tells you are 11 years old. Okay, calculate it for you. You press OK, and then it puts the output here for you. So you can always receive inputs from different users when they come to your sheet. You know, instead of them typing and messing up your sheet, you know, typing in different places, all you just have to do sometimes is give them the control. They come, you know, you just run a macro from there immediately. The Excel loads up, then it brings out a form. They type their name, they type, and then you're able to save those details in the Excel sheet. You know, you are able to process the detail, use their year of birth to, you know, get their age, and then do whatever you need to do with the data and save the data in a persistent format. Hope you've learned a thing or two today. In case you have any question, please drop it on our YouTube page, on our Twitter, and we'll be glad to assist. Thank you.